Okay, wonderful. I will start quickly. Thank you, Dr. Gregor, for joining us today. I know you've got just a little time, so we will make it as quick as possible. First of all, just a little side and a note on the side. A little over a year ago, I was working hard on finding a location for your lecture here in Vienna. Very hard, because just the number of people was growing and growing. So we are very happy to have you with us in this way, and we hope that once this pandemic is in a little safer space, we will be able to host you again here.
Okay, I can't wait.
Yes, we cannot wait for you. I will just be reading the questions, the most popular questions posted by everyone who was participating in this webinar. For all of you out there, you can read through the questions and vote for the questions you like the best. So maybe that one comes up, or maybe put your own question in the Q&A window. So the first question would be by Anna, and it is intermittent fasting suitable for women relating to hormonal imbalances?
Oh, that's a great question. Actually, the largest chapter of my book, How Not to Diet, is on fasting, because there's so many different types of intermittent fasting, from alternate day fasting, 5-2 fasting, 25-5, fasting mimicking diets. And there are pros and cons to each of them. In general, I would encourage against intermittent fasting, with the potential exception of fasting mimicking diets, and that they don't seem to offer benefits over day-to-day chronic caloric restriction in terms of compliance. And critically, the largest study of intermittent fasting, alternate day fasting, found that women experience an increase in cholesterol levels versus the same amount of caloric restriction on a chronic day-to-day basis. So there's something about intermittent fasting that may increase one's cholesterol. If you still want to do it, I would encourage you get your cholesterol checked. But in terms of but it's not a hormonal imbalance issue. It is an LDL, so-called bad cholesterol issue.
Sebastian asks, to reach the protein requirement, would you prefer soy and soy products or lentils?
Oh, wow. That's just, I love them both. And they each have unique qualities that aren't found in the others. So the answer is both, right? Lentils have all that folate, which is amazing, one of the most concentrated sources of vitamin B9 folate, whereas soybeans, unlike lentils, have these wonderful phytonutrients like genistein, not found really throughout much of the plant kingdom. And so I personally would follow that advice to eat both. I have had both lentils. I had lentils this morning. When's the last time and I even had soy this morning. So already today, I've had both soybeans and lentils, and it's still early.
So this is the way to do it. Attila asks, how to reach calcium daily requirements, approximately 1,000 milligram from whole food?
The way you do it is with healthy plant foods. And what do I mean by that? I'm talking about almonds, sesame seeds, tofu, calcium fortified plant milks, and then the absolute best source, dark green leafy vegetables. That's where the cows get it from. We don't have to eat grass. Kales, collards, bok choy, basically any dark green leafies, with the exception of spinach, beet greens, and chard, which are all wonderful foods, but just a little stingy with their calcium.
Marcel asks, both coconut and cocoa are whole foods, yet sources of saturated fats. Do you recommend still making them an occasional part of whole food plant-based diet?
Fantastic questions. The coconut oil So the fat in coconut does indeed raise your cholesterol. And so one should never eat, coconut fat on its own, coconut oil. But the whole coconut, so for example, unsweetened dried flake coconut, doesn't just have the coconut oil in it. It also has plant protein, also has fiber, which is lowering your cholesterol. At the same time, the coconut oil is raising your cholesterol. So if you actually give people a whole bunch of actual coconut, what happens to their cholesterol? Nothing. Doesn't budge. So you say, well, that's great. Well, actually, if you gave them any other plant food, then you'd be giving the whole plant food, you'd be giving them the same plant protein, the same fiber, but without the coconut oil. So you'd actually get a drop in your cholesterol, right? And so in that way, coconut isn't as good, but it's not harmful. And so if you like the taste of coconut, sprinkling, dried coconut or eating a young coconut, perfectly fine. Go for it. And cocoa is actually defatted cacao. So cacao starts, it has cocoa butter, similarly to like coconut oil, right? So the fat in kind of the chocolate bean, or it's actually a seed, has a lot of saturated fat. But in making cocoa powder, you're actually removing the fat. And so the two worst parts of chocolate are the fat and the sugar, but cocoa powder doesn't have either of those. Has a little bit, but not enough to be a problem, since a typical serving is only like, a spoonful of cocoa powder. And so I had cocoa powder this morning. I tell you, I had a big breakfast. What can I say? It's filled with all sorts of wonderful things. But so cocoa, right? So if you love chocolate, well then make your smoothies like a chocolate smoothie by adding some cocoa powder. You can put on oatmeal, you can do anything, but you just you'd rather not have the sugar and the fat. Though as saturated fats go, there's lots of different types of saturated fat, and the predominant saturated fat in cocoa butter is actually stearic acid, which is relatively neutral in terms of cholesterol, as opposed to palmitic acid, which is found in palm oil, meat and dairy, and that's really kind of the worst in terms of raising your cholesterol.
So your breakfast was cocoa, lentils, and soybeans. This is the breakfast to go for.
So it was my brol bowl. So I don't know if I talked about brol in this talk. So it's my barley, rye, oats, lentils. And so these are all groats. So barley groats, rye berries, or rye groats, and oat groats, like steel cut oats before they're cut. And lentils, these little small beluga lentils. That's the base. And then you can make it sweet or savory, all sorts of things. I added some unsweetened soy milk. So there's my soy, there's my lentils. I added the sprinkle of cocoa, then added ground flax seeds, walnuts, pomegranate arrows, pomegranate seeds. It's hard to find pomegranates these days. I paid way too much money for it. And fresh strawberries. It is strawberry season, at least where I am. So I can get good local strawberries. And then I've actually started incorporating wheat germ into my diet. This is the first time I've ever talked to anybody about it. So you heard it here first. I have a whole chapter in my new upcoming book, which will be out next year, How Not to Age, where I talk about the benefits of a compound called spermidine. And the most concentrated source is wheat germ. And so I've been experimenting with incorporating it into my diet. And so you will be reading a lot more about wheat germ and spermidine in general in my future books and videos.
Well, thank you for the inside information. We've got a question which is in German, so I'll try to roughly translate it.
Please.
The topic is that you generally don't recommend oil. And the question is, what is the main problem with it, except for the high calorie density? And the person in question says that I don't have a problem with my own weight. Is it okay if I put some oil into my food, so to say?
Well, yeah, so that's an excellent question, right? So the caloric density, people think of caloric density in terms of weight loss or weight gain. That's certainly the context in which I talk about caloric density in How Not to Diet, in the presentation we all just saw. But the caloric density has two components, right? There's the amount of calories, and then the calories that are displacing healthier calories. So when you talk about, you only have about 2,000 calories in the calorie bank every day. And the question is, you wake up in the morning, you say, all right, I got 2,000 calories. Where am I going to get it from? Right? And so you want, since you only have a limited amount of calories, you want to get as much nutrition for those limited quantity of calories. How much nutrition can you get for 2,000 calories? And so the most nutrient dense foods, huge amount of nutrition for small number of calories, dark green leafy vegetables, right? I mean, something like kale, massive amounts of nutrition, hardly has any calories at all. That's bang for your buck. What's the opposite of dark green leafy vegetables? Oil. Oil has more calories per gram than anything else, more than lard, because lard actually has a little water in it. It's pure calories, basically, and almost no nutrition. There may be a little vitamin E. Some of the less refined oils have some other phytonutrients, but the denominator, huge, lots of calories for a tiny numerator of nutrition. So even if you don't care about your weight at all, and you just want to maximize nutrition per calorie for the day, the best thing you can eat are vegetables. Worst thing you can eat would be oil. It's way, way over far on the spectrum.
Thank you. Michelle asks, what do you think about sweetener?
Which sweetener?
That's a good question.
Anyone in particular? There are good sweeteners and bad sweeteners, harmful sweeteners, helpful sweeteners, and harmless sweeteners. And so a little bit of a broad question. So a harmful sweetener would be the industrial sugar, sucrose, table sugar, or high fructose corn syrup. Found a lot of processed foods. I would encourage people to try to minimize their intake of those, as well as there are a number of non-caloric artificial sweeteners like aspartame, which found in NutraSweet, Splenda, which is sucralose, have adverse effects. I have videos about those. Again, those would be harmful. There are some relatively neutral, meaning they're not harmful, they're not helpful, and that would be something called erythritol, which is a sugar alcohol, something called allulose, which is a rare sugar, and monk fruit is probably, there's a monk fruit extracts, which are also, so I put those in the relatively harmless category, though there are still caveats, and I have videos about that. And the really only helpful ones, like sweeteners that are actually good for you, are whole food sweeteners. You want something sweet? Eat a sweet potato. Eat some grapes, eat an apple, eat, eat dried fruit, frozen fruit, have a smoothie, eat, fresh fruit. In fact, here's another sneak preview that no one's going to get. Now, note, by the time the book comes out, I may run across new research that takes me in the other direction. So this isn't the final word, but I may end up, again, not sure, recommending people eat freeze-dried strawberry powder. It's just powdered strawberries for fisetin, which is a phytonutrient, which is really only concentrated in strawberries. And you'd have to eat a lot of fresh strawberries. And so that would be hard to do year round. And so most of the experiments are actually done with freeze-dried strawberries. And so I may end up with a recommendation. But I got some just to try it out and see what I could do with it. And it is really tasty stuff. And so you can sprinkle it. I forgot that this morning. I forgot my strawberry powder, but I've been using it in smoothies and things. So yeah, give it a try. I don't know if it'll make the final cut, but there's some benefits to some nutrients in strawberries.
Fascinating. An anonymous attendee asks, do you have tips against cravings for things like sweets or chips, especially due to hormones?
Oh my God, cravings are completely natural. We evolved over millions of years to develop this insatiable thirst for water, for sodium, for salt, right? There weren't salt shakers in the African savannah. Where are you going to get salt from? So we divide this, and we didn't get enough, we die. So we have this intense craving for salt, intense craving for calories, right? We evolved in the context of scarcity. And so concentrate source of calories. What's that? Sweet, fatty. So anything that's sweet, like honey or fruit, ripe fruit, or brains, bone marrow, anything, anything that gives us that fattiness, which is has more calories than anything else. So cravings for salt, sugar, fat. So of course the food industry knows our natural biological urges and then uses them against us, hooks us to get just the right amount of salt, sugar, and fat to make us eat not just one and give them lots of money, make their shareholders happy. Unfortunately, it's making our own bodies and the bodies of our families very unhappy. And so how do you get out? If it's a natural inborn thing, what are you going to do? What you're going to do is control your environment. If you have cookies in the house, it is a very rare individual. Now, the first, most people could be like, I'm not going to eat a cookie today. I'm going to be good. I'm going to eat my apple. Okay. But it is a rare person who can go day after day with the cookie, full knowledge that the cookies are there and not eventually get into the cookies, right? And so what you do is you don't have cookies in the house. You don't have junk in the house. And if the most calorically dense food in the whole house is an apple, you're going to eat that apple. You get hungry enough, you're going to eat that apple, right? And so the more barrier. Now, of course, yes, you could go out and buy cookies, but the more barriers, the more inconvenience you can add. So it's just harder. Like the natural default easy choice is an apple, because we also have a natural biological urge for energy conservation. We don't want to exercise. We want to lie on the couch. That's good. That's normal. That's natural. We try to conserve calories, right? And so we're going to use one biological urge, energy conservation, against another. Yes, you could go buy a donut. But if you had a donut right here, you'd eat it where, I don't want to walk all the way to the donut shop. Okay. Now, these days, it's harder. Why? Because there's apps on your phone. You can press a button, all of a sudden donuts arrive, magic. That's dangerous, because then, so I have had some patients where I've told them to delete the apps off their phone. And they say, well, I'll just put the apps back on my phone. But yes, then you have to enter your name again, put your credit card in again. Barriers, resistance. You want the easy path to be the healthiest path. Control your environment. You say, wait a second, my spouse, my children, they won't live in a house without cookies. Fine. Put them in a safe. Put them in a box with a little lock. They got the key. You don't got the key. You have controlled your environment. And let them, if they're not ready to eat healthy, well, then that shouldn't impair your control over your health.
Well, the kids do eat all the cookies quite quickly. Do you realize that, right? But
that's why you shouldn't have cookies in the house.
Yeah. I'm not a normal person. I don't like sweets, so I just go for nuts usually.
Well, yeah, no, some people have savory. Well, then you got, just not have chips in the house and not have, yeah.
Alexandra asks, how would you start your weight loss journey? What's the first step? Or do you change everything at once?
It really depends on your personality. Some people have very black and white thinking, where, if they're going to do something, they have to do it all the way or none of the way. And for those people, well, your own psychology best. Maybe it's best for you to, jump all in, clean out the pantry. But I think for most people, it's easier for them to make gradual steps, because again, it's not what you eat today, tomorrow, next week, right? It's what are you eating 10 years from now, right? So however long it takes you to figure out how to make healthy eating convenient, within your budget, tasty enough, however long that project takes, every day I'm gonna try a new breakfast or something until I find one I like. And you should wait until, however long it takes. It could take you months before you find a good collection of 8-9 dishes that you really love and easy to make and delicious and convenient, so you have that rotation to give yourself the variety. Okay, however long that takes, remember, it only works if it's long term. Anyone can white knuckle it and eat something they don't like for a few days, weeks, right? But then you go back, right? So it has to be good. It has to be tasty. It has to be something you can incorporate in your diet long term, however long that takes. So I've often tell people to start with breakfast. You can start by adding healthy foods to your diet rather than taking away if you're the kind of person that really, feels deprived. And, I say, well, look, I want you to eat, an apple before every meal, or something like that. And that actually, as you learn in the video, that actually, wait a second, I just told you to eat more food, but you actually lose more weight because the apple takes up so much space in the stomach. That actually cuts down on subsequent food, which is almost always more calorically dense than the apple, because apples actually have very few calories, mostly water and air. And so depending on the patient, I'll use a variety of techniques, but tend to kind of slow them in, because we're not losing weight for bikini season. We're losing weight for the long term to maximize our health and longevity.
Thank you for that. Do you manage one last question?
How are we doing? Oh, totally. We got 2 minutes. Let's do it.
Wonderful. Anke asks, if I try to eat all the cups worth of food in the daily dozen list, I am way overeating. How do the amounts differ between tall and small people, or men and women in cup sizes?
Yeah, no, this is just these are aspirational recommendations, something to aspire to. You should not force yourself to eat more food than you're comfortable with. But it gives you a sense of the types of foods I encourage people to eat on a regular basis. And that's really the benefit of the Daily Dozen, is it is actually so much food, but actually so few calories. If you actually stick to it, there's actually not maybe not enough calories if you're large enough to actually maintain your body weight. So you lose weight even though you're eating too much food, and that's the kind of the whole point of the thing. So I would still encourage people to eat those same variety of foods, prioritize those foods in their diet, but no need to force yourself to overeat.
Okay, I think now you have to leave for the next Zoom meeting. Thank you very much for joining us, for being here. I do hope we see each other maybe next year live in Vienna, something like that. And we are very happy.
I can't wait. I was so looking forward to coming before the whole world shut down. But don't worry, I will be there and cannot wait.
And bring some more information regarding wheat germs.
Wheat germ. I will have the final word on wheat germ.
Thank you very much. Have a great evening. Goodbye. Ja, vielen Dank an alle von euch, die heute dabei waren. Es war sicherlich einfach zu kurz, die Fragerunde, aber ich hoffe, ihr habt das auch genießen können. Ihr bekommt alle, also die angemeldet sind, auf unserer Webseite bekommen die Aufnahme von der Fragerunde und von dem Vortragsteil bzw. den Link zum Vortragsteil per E-Mail zugeschickt. Ich kann leider die restlichen Fragen nicht mehr beantworten. Allerdings auf der Webseite von Dr. Greger, also nutritionfacts.org, gibt es sehr viele Videos, sehr viele Artikel, sehr viele Erklärungen und sicherlich die meisten Antworten auf die Fragen, die hier noch vorhanden sind, beziehungsweise auch auf unserer Webseite www.vegan.at. Und für alle, die sich für die uns gerne unterstützen möchten, es noch nicht tun, gibt es jetzt eben die Gelegenheit, uns zu unterstützen mit dem Link www.at/halber-Beitrag zum halben Preis. Und wenn man auf der Webseite ist, kann man auch schauen auf www.at/Webinare und dort sieht man, welche Webinare uns in den nächsten Wochen erwarten. Vielen Dank, dass ihr da wart. Einen schönen Abend wünsche ich euch allen und bleibt gesund. Bis bald.